The Lord be with you, and a warm welcome to you from all of us here at Powers Court with Kilbride. Is it just me, or have we had the darkest winter we've had in a really long time? As you can see here, there's beautiful flashes of green and the mosses and the field further across the river, but we have had a week now of days where it seems to have just been dusk all the time, and it's never really, as my mother-in-law used to say, it's never risen up. The day hasn't risen up at all. Nonetheless, and even on this kind of damp, dark day by the river, you're very welcome to join me for the next short while as we draw together in the presence of God in this little square. I was asking God recently what I should talk about, what might we talk about this week in this square, and a particular set of thoughts came into my head and I wanted to share them with you today, because sometimes in this square, and I hope it is a place that has brought comfort to you, courage to you maybe at times when you needed it, but we also need to push the door and move into that place that might be a little bit challenging for us at times. And even in this square we need to do this too. But first, and as always, we pause for a moment in prayer. My mum died at the age of 45 back in 1968, at a time when the world wasn't half as good as it is now at detecting cancer and treating it. She died of cervical cancer 4 years after I was born. A fact that has haunted me for the rest of my life. This unapologetic way that death had of coming and just simply removing somebody without a trace and without any warning, as far as I was concerned. That's something that has really travelled with me through my life. And my dad, one of my great heroes in this life, made it his job to keep me happy and nourished and cared for and safe. He gave me a very joyous 11 years of my life at the very beginning, around my mum's death and on. And when I was an older person, when I was an adult, there came a day when he told me about her passing. Mum had been in St. Michael's Hospital in Dunleary, and Dad received a call. He'd gone home to rest. He received a call one morning to say that her condition had quite dramatically deteriorated and he had to come in. And he sat by her bed, and a mere 2 hours before she actually died, she just very quietly said to him, "Walter, am I dying?" A phrase and a notion that has also haunted me for all of my life when I think of her so close to death and nobody to talk to really, or nobody had spoken to her, which again is a lot different than what they do these days in the world. And in many ways I think it's the thoughts of that, of somebody being on their own, that has brought me to where I am. Or certainly one of my biggest wishes or dreams would have been to be able to be with her at that time in her life when she was so uncertain as to what was going to happen fairly shortly. And isn't it ironic that the two biggest fears I have had, the fear of death, unapologetic as it is and sudden, and the fear of loneliness the hours before death, are at the very heart of the occupation I now carry out on a daily basis. Even though now that I've done the job a little longer, I suppose it's less, I still pause on the outside of a door into a room where somebody is gravely ill or dying. I still feel the trigger that is there from my past life. I still pause for a prayer and try, and as much as I can, to overcome my fear and to open myself to receive the grace that God always, constantly gives in situations such as these. On that day, back in 1968, after Mum had died, Dad reported it was lunchtime, and he said he was in a bit of a daze. He got into his car and he was driving up the main street of Dunleary, which was chock-a-block with traffic. And he said coming the opposite direction and stopped in traffic was somebody that he knew in another car, who had the good kindness, I suppose, to roll down the window and say to Dad, "Walter, how's Phyllis doing?" The timing was not good. I don't know what Dad said in response, and I'm sure he was hard pressed to remember. All I do know is that Dad said he went home and he went into one of the safest places in his world, which was his greenhouse at the bottom of the garden. There, on his own, he drew breath and he wept for the love of his life that he had just lost. I don't know how much time passed, but there was a gentle knock on the greenhouse door, And in came a more elderly man than himself, Arnold Crawford, who also worked for Murdoch's in Dunleary and had become a very close friend of Dad's. Dad couldn't remember the conversation they had after Arnold had expressed how sorry he was at Dad's loss. But it didn't really matter about the conversation that they had had. What Dad remembered was that Arnold had been there. I suppose as a final thought, quite often we can stand on the other side of the door and be filled with this fear or the triggers of our past lives or whatever it might be. You know, that fear of inadequacy or a fear of lack of words or saying the wrong thing, maybe too many words. Or there are so many things that can fill our minds, but in actual fact, I think that all that God requires of us in most of these circumstances is that we are present, that we just push the door as Arnold did and say, I'm just so very sorry, and just sit and be still. That's the type of presence that's never forgotten.